breaking news. I'm not okay right now, and I feel like I have to share that with all of you.
Ed, what's wrong, man?
Because I just saw a YouTube video of somebody blending 30 White Castle sliders and turning it into a spool of sausage. And I'm not making any of those words up.
But that's way too much starch.
It was yellow.
That's not a sausage. That's a meatloaf in a casing.
It really is. But this was the only transition that I could come up with to an even sadder story, which is that Eric Adams has suspended his mayoral campaign.
Rip King.
America was not ready for anti-leprechaun Kamalism.
I mean, he is going to have to do this full time, right? Like, he's going to just, like, go get a bow and arrow and go, I don't know, book a flight to Ireland.
They need to do, like, what the Brits do with those ceremonial positions. Like, you can be Lord Mayor of London, or you can be the Sheriff of Nottingham, or whatever. You don't have any actual power, but you just get to go out there and be kind of a symbol of the city. And New York should do that with Eric Adams. They worked very hard to find the weirdest asshole it is possible to find for their mayor. And they've been through many iterations of this. Like, they've done Ed Koch, they've done Rudy Mussolini, they've done Michael Bloomberg, they've done DeBungler, and they finally got Eric Adams, and now they're throwing him away shamefully.
Retroactively, it does seem as though they have, like, really done a lot to salvage de Blasio's reputation.
Oh. Well. Not so easy to find a mayor that doesn't suck shit, huh?
Yes, it was the onion.
Thank you,
Yes.
Propter.
Yeah, but I mean, Eric Adams does kind of seem like the perfection of a certain form of the NYC mayor. And as somebody who does not live in New York City, I'll be sad to see him go for that reason.
Absolutely.
Mayoral apotheosis.
We are never going to get that type of guy running New York again. Like, the political coalitions are shifting, the machine is breaking, and we are never going to get that type of guy again. We are never going to get the black symbol of the NYPD running the city again. It's just never going to be possible. This is Normal Men, a podcast from four men who are clinging desperately to normalcy in an era when that's asking a bit too much. I'm George in Charlotte.
In D.C., I'm Propter Malone.
In outer Florida, I'm low-tax speedrun enjoyer.
And I'm Ed in Boston.
I have faith in New York. I believe that a few months into that job, they can make Zoran Mamdani a really weird guy. We will get there.
No, I think the beauty of Zoran Mamdani is that, like, he's one of the first mayors New York will ever have. He came in seeming, pretty normal, and eventually he's going to have to kiss that cursed mirror that they keep in the basement of, I don't know, I'm assuming we're like I don't know.
Mayor Omelas?
Yeah, exactly. He's gonna like, turn into, like, he's gonna develop some insane fetish. I'm trying to think of, like, a country who would have, like, really illegitimate relations with. I'm thinking, like, one of the ones that no one knows about America.
Turkey? I mean, could be, but like...
Well, I already have Turkey is the problem.
Ivory Coast or something.
He seems like the sort of guy to start beef with, like, San Marino.
Yeah, no, that's what I need it to be one of those city-states, or, like, I know, there's, in northwestern Italy, there's Aosta, which is, like, technically this autonomous, sort of city-state community farm thing. I feel like that's going to be his big one, is that somehow there's, like, some, corporation we've never heard of there that practices only child slavery. And that's going to be his thing.
For those who aren't familiar with the new voice you're hearing on the podcast, our guest today is Eva Cantor at machete.gay. Eva is here to talk about, or Cantor is here to talk about, extremism and some of the stuff that's been in the news lately. We're going to get to that in a little bit. We had a couple things we wanted to talk to first, but Eva, just before we jump into some econ and some talk about the looming government shutdown, welcome. Thanks for joining us. Do you want to tell folks a little bit about what you do and what brings you to us tonight?
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about kind of whatever. I came to the field of counter-extremism through the route that a lot of people do. I kind of had like that cool Batman story where something terrible happened, and I was like, well, I guess this is my whole thing now. Not a furry, critically. So I don't have that going. But look, you don't wear that much latex and have it not be a thing. But no, I do a lot of, kind of like semi-independent research. I work with an organization that is politically not the feds and not evil, I'll say that much. But yeah, I study kind of like fringe political extremism, what drives people to it, and the last couple weeks, months of my life have been me going, boy, I sure hope this is a quiet week, and then history happens again. I was having a really chill Sunday, actually. I was like super jazzed, like, oh, it kind of seems like maybe everybody got their wiggles out, and then I looked at the news and was like, oh, cool, awesome.
We got looks like 2 this weekend, huh?
3, right?
We're not sure they're all right wing.
Oh, okay.
Which is a recurring theme on this show.
I think the casino shooter might have just been nuts.
So sorry, the 3 we're referring to are North Carolina, the Michigan LDS Church, and
the Kickapoo Casino.
That was a new one for me.
Right.
Learning about that one as we speak.
So boat, Mormon, casino.
Got it.
Propter needs to turn off the news feed.
Yeah.
He's getting there before no one is as up to speed on this, and I'm worried for you.
Yep.
I'm going to be honest, man. I, over the weekends, I pretty much lately have just been getting high and playing Metal Gear Solid 5 every weekend. Just shutting off the news. It's the only way you can stay sane. Those people who are like, I got to look at the news every day. Either you're going to unspool in a truly fascinating way, like a human supernova, or you're made of certain stuff than I am.
Yeah, I literally spend all day watching news feeds during the week. Like, that is my whole job. And the idea of doing that on the weekend makes me want to, we're going to redact what I would do if I had to do that. So...
Break out the peanut swamps.
I like that. But, self-care through Solid Snake. That makes a lot of sense.
I go hang out on my cool base full of boys. Just picture the child soldiers, and everyone's being really normal about them.
Oh, that happened.
That's a game thing for those who are not familiar.
Yeah,
I hate it.
As the resident non-gamer on the podcast, I really appreciate when Propter jumps in to explain details like this, because these 3 knuckleheads were in the group chat all afternoon talking about a game that I didn't even realize was a game until about 10 messages deep. And,
several.
Yeah.
We jumped from game to game.
Well, there was one specific one that's Silkworm or Silkstrong or something.
Song. Yes.
Silk Song. Great. Yeah.
Silkworm.
That might be the C block. There is a Silkworm in Silk Song. So you're not totally off.
We'll get to it. First, though, we need to talk about economic growth. And this week was pretty significant in that respect. So,
was it good?
Yeah, actually, it depends on your definition of good. That's the fun part. If your definition of good is economic growth, then yes, it was an excellent week this week. We got GDP revisions for the second quarter. The way GDP works is the BEA goes out and does a bunch of spreadsheets and tots up their estimate of how much stuff everyone produced and consumed.
The BEA is the Bureau of Economic Analysis.
Thank you. Yes. Excellent work. So the Bureau of Economic Analysis goes out and estimates what everyone produced and everyone's income. These are the same thing, just different sides of the coin. So, okay. They do that through 3 estimates. One is right after the quarter ends, the next a month after that, and the third release is 3 months after the quarter ends. So that was last week for the quarter ending June 30th. There's also an annual benchmark revision process where they get better data over time and use it to sort of shine up prior year estimates and look back on prior years and quarters and do a big revision once a year as opposed to right after they were released. So it turned out that growth was a lot stronger than we thought. Growth hit 3.8% in Q2. So this is the 3 months ending June. That followed 0.6%. Both of those are at annual rates. So in other words, if the rate of change over the course of the year was that large, it would be a 0.6% decline for the year based on the speed in Q1, 3.8% in Q2. And then because of GDP revisions and other data that got released, the GDP tracking for Q3 is looking like pretty close to 4%, 3.9%, which is really, really fast. The Federal Reserve estimates that the voters on the FOMC estimate that trend growth is like 1.9%. So it's like twice as fast as trend, which is like white hot. And it takes the year to 2.3. So that 0.6, the 3.8, the 3.9, that averages out to 2.3. And so that's where we are. So I think if your prior is that the economy is about to collapse, either because of policy interventions, which have been very negative from month to month, but haven't yet slowed the most important part of U.S. economic growth, which is consumer spending, then you could be disappointed. Now, in the long run, we're still going to have growth issues because we've got fewer people from immigration, we've got higher inflation, we've got all sorts of downstream effects of businesses not being sure what to do with themselves because of all the policy change. But things are holding up, which I don't think was really on anyone's bingo card, even 9 months ago, really. So
now GDP has kind of a complicated relationship to the tariffs, correct?
Yes. So back in Q1, I mentioned that we had a 0.6% annualized decline in Q1. The reason for that is that a bunch of imports came on shore. So people were like, okay, tariffs are coming. Let's buy a bunch of stuff from the rest of the world. In the formula where you define GDP, any import is considered a negative of output. In other words, you're subtracting it from output. The reason for this is because when you bring something on shore, you import it, it's not produced in the United States. It's produced somewhere else by definition. So now the rub to that is that usually that decline in imports, or that negative from imports, is offset by increases somewhere else. Either stronger consumption, people consuming what was imported, stronger investment, either fixed investment, business capital expenditure, or higher inventories, something like that. So that in Q1, the import surge was really, really huge. Inventories shot up, and then inventories have come down very quickly. What is likely true now is that inventories are too low for businesses to keep eating costs from tariffs. So inflation should accelerate further from here. Again, referencing the Federal Reserve, they sort of think consensus there is middle of next year, we'll see that roll off, the tariff effects roll off. But as we all know, because if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably like us reading far too much news. The tariff stuff is super dynamic. It's moving around a ton. So it remains to be seen exactly how much tariffs are a one-off thing versus a ongoing ball of dung for the economy to process over the next couple of years.
So I have a really, I was going to say it's a dumb question, but I have a feeling it's a question that our highly intelligent and very attractive audience is likely to ask. You say that the tariff effects are being projected to be likely to roll off.
From a price perspective. Yeah.
Sure, but what does that actually mean? Because right now I'm looking at the fact that a garage that I was pricing out has now gone up in price $25,000. Obviously not all of that is tariffs. Some of it is just gouging, but
right.
That feels like something that doesn't roll off in the sense of my conception of interest rates being the I don't want to say accelerator pedal, but the oxygen to the engine, maybe.
Yeah. So from a price perspective, the way to think about this is if you imagine prices sort of rising at 2% per year, right? At just any price, just general prices are rising at 2% per year. Suddenly you've got a tariff shock and overnight prices rise an additional 2%. So now it's up 4%. But then that 2% increase, that new increase, doesn't keep happening forever, right? It just happens as a level shift.
Okay, so it's amortizing the rate of change.
I don't think I would describe it as amortizing. It's forecasting the rate of change given level shifts.
Okay,
given
right.
Exogenous level shifts.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know. That's probably too wordy. It's basically that we've gone from 2% essentially effective tariff rates to, I think the latest was 15%, something like that, effective tariff rates. We're not now going to go from 15 to 27 or 28. I mean, maybe we will, but that's not, if we do, that's a new thing as opposed to, the tariffs should on paper go up once. Now, again, everyone laughs at we shouldn't see that happen. The Trump tariffs have been sort of a rolling thing that's happened over the course of 9 months. They haven't been just a one-day snap and now everyone adjusts. So that's a little bit of a sticky wicket, as we say in the business. But it's unlikely that tariffs will rise as much as they have in the past 9 months again over the next 9 months.
So it's not like it's factoring out, whatever you want to call it as far as drag on the economy. It's the rate of change stabilizes.
Yeah, the rate of change should... Economists like to think about economies being in equilibrium or not in equilibrium, and stuff shocking the economy out of equilibrium and then it going back to sort of balanced, right? And the shocks have all sorts of different implications. And in the case of tariffs, there's been this shock to business confidence, which has reduced rates of investment, and it moved around consumption timing, and it has raised the rate of inflation and whatever. But the sort of assumption is that the economy then adjusts and adapts and gets back to equilibrium. And to move it again, you need a new shock. Now, there are other shocks on the horizon. ACA subsidies expiring. Again, this is going to be a good segue into shutdown talk so we can end my econ nonsense. The effects of the tax bill. There's student loan repayments. There's lots of stuff out there that could be new negative shocks. The question will be, will it be big enough? But for the listener sitting at home, I think the thing to take away from this little segment is the economy has grown pretty fast over the past 6 months and is not looking like it's slowing down the way many people projected. And just knowing that recent growth has been strong means the outlook for future growth should be stronger than it otherwise would be. So there we go. I mentioned shutdown talk. So Propter, take over, buddy.
Sure, yeah. We are in kind of a delicate stage of negotiations on the shutdown. I think that this is evidence of weakness in some ways by congressional Republicans, but that Senate Democrats are being kind of jammed with it. The current state of play is that the House has passed a short-term continuing resolution that extends appropriations, which is what we're talking about here, through, I want to say it's mid-November. And it's essentially a clean CR, which is to say that it's an extension of what previous appropriations look like. And this is important because previous appropriations, as they were under the CR earlier this year, are essentially Biden numbers. These are numbers that were reached between Biden and a split Congress in the second half of Biden's term. So from like a neutral position, you got to think that's pretty favorable to Dems, because these are appropriations that look like what happened under split government in a situation where we have a Republican trifecta. This is not necessarily a situation where coming in, you would expect Democrats to be able to fund Democratic priorities in the way that this Biden-era budget does. That said, one of the major things that has been happening over the course of the Trump administration is impoundment, which is when the executive says, well, we know you appropriated this money for such and such, but we're not going to spend it. We're just not. There are various reasons to dress that up with, but the ultimate result is that if something is successfully impounded, the money that Congress said should be spent on X does not get spent on X.
That seems bad.
Yeah, it's bad. This has been in American history kind of a sore spot for Congress, to the extent that they passed something called the Impoundment Control Act in the early 70s that makes it illegal to do this. You can't do this. That is still good law, and that is still law that in theory governs the government of the United States of America. But what's happening is that the Trump administration is claiming to impound things, and then the courts are taking frickin' forever to resolve the question. So functionally, there are things that are getting impounded, such as I think it was $5 billion worth of foreign aid that SCOTUS just kind of waved through on the shadow docket that was not spent by the end of the fiscal year and will not be spent by the end of the fiscal year. So effectively, that's been impounded. Okay, that's all preamble to kind of the situation where we are, which is that this relatively clean short-term CR has passed through the House. The Republicans in the House are attempting to jam the Senate with it, which is to say that they are leaving this kind of exploding offer in front of the Senate and saying, hey, if you guys don't take this offer, if you guys don't ratify what we passed, the government's going to shut down. As followers of this podcast and followers of politics are doubtless aware, Democrats do not have a majority in the U.S. Senate either. What they have is they have a substantial enough minority that they can filibuster things. This is a filibusterable continuing resolution. So Democrats with a minority of votes can prevent this from ever getting an actual up or down vote and thereby shut down the government. Contrary to what appears to be popular belief, this is not a maneuver that has happened a lot of times in past. To my knowledge, there's only been one time that the Senate minority has filibustered to shut down the government, and that was Democrats in kind of a weird situation in late 2018. This is not something that Republicans do as a matter of course. This is not something that, as far as I know, Republicans have ever done before. So, to get that out of the way.
Didn't Cruz shut down the government in, 2011 or 2013?
Yeah, Cruz did a talking. I don't know if that actually resulted in a shutdown, but Cruz did a talking filibuster there. That was split government at the time. That was a Republican House. So he was kind of crapping on everybody at that time, rather than it being something where everybody else wanted the same thing, and then the minority in the Senate was blocking it. But that's correct. That Cruz did I want to say it was like a 30-some hour talking filibuster.
Hard to believe that people don't like the guy.
It's so weird.
He makes an impression. What Senate Democrats are now faced with is either they filibuster this clean continuing resolution, shut down the government, and it looks like that's probably what they're going to do, or they wave this through, they permit an up or down vote, which presumably succeeds, and then we do this whole fight over again in November. Democrats came under a lot of fire earlier this year when, in a very similar situation, they elected not to filibuster the continuing resolution that got us to this point. Chuck Schumer, in particular, took a lot of fire from points on sort of the left liberal axis for hanging the House, which held the entire caucus on that issue, out to dry. And it is likely that he will come under fire in the same way if any of the following things happens. If either A, Senate Dems do not filibuster, B, Senate Dems filibuster and then break. I guess that's really the scenarios where Chuck looks the weakest. When I say filibuster and then break, what I mean by that is that the Senate Dems filibuster this continuing resolution, which causes the government to shut down. And then at some point in coming days, while the government is shut down, there's enough of a movement within the Democratic caucus to peel off enough votes to give the continuing resolution or something similar an up or down vote. So basically they lose parts of their caucus, and that allows an edge to slip through, and the continuing resolution presumably passes at that point.
Just to clarify who voted in the Senate in March, they didn't all vote for the final bill. Only Shaheen of New Hampshire and King of Maine voted for the final bill. Those two votes were irrelevant for passage of the final bill. But for cloture, so ending debate and moving on to the final vote, you had Rand Paul in Kentucky voted against it as a Republican, and then you had King, Schumer, Shaheen, Schatz of Hawaii, Peters of Michigan, Gillibrand of New York, Hassan of New Hampshire, Cortez Masto of Nevada, Durbin of Illinois, and Fetterman of Pennsylvania voting for cloture, which is that's your sort of roster to get it through. And they only passed that vote by, if two of those hadn't voted or three of those hadn't voted with the Republicans, then they wouldn't have been able to close for cloture. So
there was widespread speculation at the time that this was essentially vote trading that was happening, that some people were taking the hit for other people in the caucus who were more vulnerable,
possibly
for one reason or another.
I just want to stop for a second and reflect on what it must be like to live in Rand Paul's head. Like,
Oh yeah.
can you imagine being
no
that?
thanks, I'd rather not.
Can you imagine just being that dipshit and just like, I can't even imagine the level of self-absorption necessary. Granted, senator, I know.
I don't know
but
where
like,
he gets it from. I mean, his dad is so sane.
Right.
I do think the interesting thing about Rand Paul, like he frustrates me because I'm not going to go on the mat here for Rand Paul, nuts to that guy, but like he does occasionally like seem to have principles. Now they're space alien, who knows what's going on in their principles, but like he does actually seem to believe something.
Morality like rotated at 90 degrees from everyone else. Yeah.
Yeah, it's chaotic lawful. Like there is a law, but God only knows what it is.
Yeah, I guess I just went down the roll call there to emphasize that this is the key block here was leadership, right? Schumer, Gillibrand, Schatz. Gillibrand's not leadership, but she's elevated in the caucus. Peters and Durbin are your block there, where leadership clearly made the call that this had to go through. And if leadership doesn't make the same call and is really not really behind it, they're going to have a hard time getting this thing through. And they are not making the same sounds they were this time that they did in March.
I kind of wonder if it's going to, and this is spitballing, which is our favorite activity here. I do think that like the external environment has changed substantially since the last time around, right?
Dramatically,
like,
yeah.
People got super mad at Schumer, but I have a feeling that the blowback would be very different if we had had a shutdown then as opposed to now. Not that a shutdown is ever a good thing for really anyone. Checks clearing are a good idea. But like, it does seem to me that it's at least more within the realm of acceptability for normal people now, when it probably wouldn't have been then.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of people who want Democrats to push for a shutdown because they perceive Senate Democrats in particular as being kind of flaccid.
Oh, come on. You have to say feckless. It was, but
the title is aspirational, Ed.
I'm a fan of Flaccid.
I thought flaccid was good.
But everyone says feckless Democrats. You have to be on brand.
All right, feckless Democrats. There are some people who would like to see Democrats push whatever buttons they have because they feel correctly that terrible things are happening within the federal government, and Democrats need to make more noise about these terrible things that are happening. On the one hand, I'm sympathetic to that point of view. On the other hand, the shutdown is not actually going to do very much to impact ICE operations. It's not going to do very much to impact many of the things that people see as being the worst excesses of the Trump administration. So there's a little bit of a disconnect in terms of what the buttons that Senate Dems have before them actually do and what people would like those buttons to do.
I mean, it's the usual, right? We have to do something. This is something, therefore we do it. It's the poster's creed. But like, maybe don't. I don't know, George.
There's also a thing too where the big ask that Democrats are shooting for is full extension of the Affordable Care Act subsidies for exchange purchased healthcare plans. And there's an interesting heads I win, tails you lose thing going on here for Democrats, which is unusual. Usually it's reversed. If Democrats are unsuccessful in this effort to get that extension passed, then there will be a significant negative blowback against Republicans, because we're talking 30% increases, I think, is roughly what we're talking for health insurance plans for people that are buying on an exchange. And it is so easy to then say, look, we went to the mat for this specific thing, and they were willing to do anything they could to shove this down your throat. So in this particular instance, like, I'm not actually convinced that it'd be nice to see some fight from Senate Democrats, but I'm not convinced that if they don't hold the line, that the bad thing ends up coming back on Senate Democrats. I think it hurts Republicans more.
I think that's fair, but one of the dynamics here is that both sides are kind of trying to marshal their forces so that whatever this battle is, it's being fought on the most favorable possible terrain for them. So Republicans are trying to do this on a short-term clean CR. This is about as unobjectionable a thing as they could pass with regards to appropriations. Like the objections against a short-term clean CR are essentially that there should be bigger protest within the Senate Democratic caucus. You know, you're still allowed to have this fight in a month and a half, even if you take the clean CR. The clean CR itself is not terribly offensive. This doesn't include any of, for instance, the anti-trans stuff that it looks like is going to be in the full year budget from the House. It doesn't include all that culture war stuff. It actually restores the DC funding that got trampled on back last spring. So Republicans are trying to set this up so it's as favorable terrain as possible for them, and Democrats are trying to do the same thing. The reason the ask is the ACA subsidies extended for a year is because that's something that the caucus is unified on. People have tossed out all kinds of different things as possibilities.
But also, though, if they get a clean CR for a month, then renewal notices go out and you don't have to bargain over the exchange subsidy thing anymore. So passing a clean CR for a month, if it is a true clean CR, right? Am I right in saying that, Propter?
It's not perfect, but it's pretty good.
Okay. So whatever. I'm just going to say clean CR. If you're passing a clean CR for a month, the gun goes off and hits Republicans in the knee, and then they have to come back to the bargaining table again in otherwise the same terms. that seems like a pretty good outcome to me. I mean, I don't know. I'm not. This feels really different from March when it was like, no, y'all really should be fighting on this.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I always come back to, like any discussion of like, the looming shutdown thing is, for people like us who are horrible perverts and pay a ton of attention to the news and, read Wall Street Journal and God knows what else.
That's right. Get our ass.
Bloomberg Terminal.
Yeah, I mean, I've got it real bad. We're all, God, I really wish I had a cheerwine. No, I was watching Ed drink that, and I was like, God, one of those would hit really hard. Now that I'm on the East Coast, they're everywhere. But no, like, for people like us, we see a shutdown, we see whatever happened in government, and we are like, I don't say able, that sounds kind of snotty, but like, we're willing to do the thought of like, okay, where did this come from? Who's really responsible? Blah, 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 whatever. This is my, kind of campaign experience talking, but like, people blame the president. People think the president has in his office a big bunch of buttons that say good, bad, rain, Mets win the World Series, whatever. And
gas prices up and down.
Just a big lever of like good and bad that you can just crank all day. And as I often have to tell people, on that note, that like the president actually doesn't have any individual power to do anything good. The president almost only has power to do bad things.
Whoops.
Weird.
Yeah, oh well. It would be a shame if we had a president who really enjoys doing that. But no, like, I do wonder, if a shutdown happens, are the real ham and eggers, people who have literally anything else to do with their lives, including nothing, are they gonna, like, go, oh, it's because Democrats are, like, trying to play 5D chess and Republicans gave them this thing that's a little bit of a poison ball? I kind of don't think so. I mean, I know that now we exist in a very different period because everyone is going insane for being online. And, it's a little hard to guess what the Vox Populi is going to say. But I don't know that we're in a new regime where suddenly random people are like, oh, it's because of the Senate minority, actually.
Mm-hmm. No, that's fair. And Democrats are going to be making that case every chance they get, that, listen, Republicans control all the levers of government. They control both houses of Congress, they control the Supreme Court, they control the White House. Whatever happens, if it's bad, it's their fault.
I do worry how much they can get away with making that message when no one reads and when it seems like everyone with a camera is in the bag. But we probably should try.
Look, if anybody can dominate the discourse, it is Democratic speechifiers and marketing gurus. We all know that.
I do think that's the flip side. And I think as well as the argument for pushing for a shutdown is that, like, it creates noise. I think one thing that Trump has always had going for him, Republicans as well, and they've understood this for basically ever, even pre-Trump, is that, like, if you do and say the crazy thing, you dominate the news cycle. You have to, like, make noise to, basically to get the interview that gets posted on social media. A thing that is truer now than it was in the 2000s, way truer now than you do in the 2010s. And I do think, like, my dark hope is that Democrats realize, I mean, this is the whole Glonzo thing, right? Is that Democrats need to start saying some crazy stuff and really rattling some cages so they can go on whatever show and be like, look, bosses, there's not a whole lot we can do here, but here's all the bad stuff that, we're going to say is going on. And it totally is. Like, that is, I think a version of politics that specifically 87 million year old tulpa haver, Chuck Schumer, doesn't really have in the bag.
Well, let's game this out for a minute, right? Because we've got basically three outcomes as I see it. If Democrats do shut things down on Tuesday, outcome number one, the Democratic Senate caucus breaks, the filibuster breaks. I think this is a bad outcome for Democrats. I think Democrats validate everything people are saying about how feckless they are, flaccid, and
I'm with you, Propter. Flaccid is better.
I prefer Flaccid.
It is, but you have to be on brand.
True. Feckless is traditional. It intensifies the contempt that I think a lot of Democratic regulars hold the Democratic Senate caucus in, and particularly the Democratic Senate leadership in, if that's the way it goes. And I think it's worth saying that if that's the way it goes, it won't necessarily be leadership's fault. I mean, they'll have something to do with it, sure. But ultimately, if there are 7 or 8, depending on what happens with some of the fringe Republicans, 7 or 8 Democratic senators who can be persuaded that harm reduction by allowing the government to continue to function is the better act. It is the better course of action, then there's not a whole lot Senate leadership can do about it. So that's outcome number one. Outcome number two is Senate Republicans go nuclear, and they change the rules so that you can't filibuster this. There's some sub-outcomes within that where they're breaking the filibuster for everything, or they're just breaking the filibuster for appropriations, or they're breaking the filibuster in a one-time way that's structured so that this is a rule that applies to this one particular situation, and at least in terms of the rule they changed will never apply again.
They've already played footsie with it so far this year.
Yeah, I think that's not a particularly unlikely outcome. One of the reasons that you would do this with a Queen CR is that it makes it easier for Republicans to vote to go nuclear.
But, like, at some point, they're going to have to do this, right? Like, you can't keep going, oh, but the Republicans will do it. Yeah, they will.
Option three is you reach a deal, right? So, the third way this
How
ends...
can you reach a deal with somebody who is basically just the corporeal hand puppet of Donald Trump? He forgot what he had for lunch yesterday.
Yeah. I mean,
he literally saw B-roll on Fox News, said we were going to send federal troops to Oregon, then talked to the governor and walked it back in the space of 2 days.
there's more news on that you may have missed, which is that we are once again a go on federalizing the National Guard in Oregon.
So, got it. Okay, well, great.
Go Like Hell Machine is going to have a lot to report next week.
So, spoiler, Go Like Hell Machine will be making an appearance next week, so get excited. Anyhow, back to what you were saying, Propter.
Antifa warlord mode.
Yeah, let's leave Portland aside for the moment. So these ACA subsidies, as George pointed out earlier, them expiring would probably be a pretty big political hit for Republicans. These are structured in a way that it's going to hit people in the pocketbook when they run out. And that, much like tax cuts, the idea is that it creates a kind of political gravity that keeps it going on its own, a political inertia. So it's entirely plausible that even if Republicans go nuclear, or even if Democrats break, there is still eventually a deal where ACA subsidies are continued in this next budget. I think Donald Trump has made sure that it's not going to happen right away, though. That a deal is unlikely to be reached before Tuesday when the government shuts down. The positioning he's taken is going to make it very, very hard for there to be a deal, and the positioning the House has taken is going to make it very, very hard for there to be a deal. So you could eventually get what you're asking for, and that, whether that's gang of 8 or gang of 14 or whatever it is that comes to a deal on that, could eventually deliver that through the Senate. And then anything like that passes the Senate in a bipartisan way, if it goes to the floor in the House, it's going to have the votes.
All right. Just to close out this segment, if you were trying to keep track of the economic effects of a shutdown, the rule of thumb is 0.1 percentage points off annualized GDP in the quarter per week. So, for instance, if you have 3% growth and you have 2 weeks of shutdown, now you're at 2.8% growth. So there are some economic effects, nothing, too dire, but could be measurable.
I can't believe you're still drinking that cheer wine.
I have a 12-pack. I have to get rid of it.
No, I was talking like about
today?
Propter.
I like this stuff, man. I might go get myself some more.
That stuff.
Propter was telling me about the 200 cocktail recipes he found on the website for cheer wine. So.
Yeah, the company that makes cheer wine publishes like an absurd number of cocktail recipes.
They know. You don't want to just drink the stuff. It'll rot your teeth.
I would expect nothing less from the Dr. Pepper of the Southeast.
The Normal Men Christmas party this year is going to be off the chain.
The funny thing is, I've never had this stuff before, and I got it as part of solidarity with these yokels, but it's good.
Yeah. So
I don't think the guy who's from the birthplace of Moxie gets to call us yokels.
I have disowned Moxie, sir.
You coward.
It's the worst stuff imaginable.
It's so good.
No. Licorice is banned.
Wow.
That's actually a contentious thing because my wife is from China, so every other dish has aniseed in it, and I'm like, all right, what's in this first?
You need to get together. It makes you strong. Unless you eat too much, and then it does kill you. But you got to try.
I'm with Cantor on starting. We need to start Glonzos everywhere we can. I tried yesterday, and y'all didn't back me up.
I was really proud that Propter did not define Glonzo.
I figure at this point they should know.
Yeah, I know, right?
As we head into the John Ossoff re-election run and inevitable presidential campaign, we are going to start a Glonzo that Donald Trump is trying to get rid of Kirby Smart and replace him with Mike Bobo as head coach of the University of Georgia.
I have no idea who any of those people are, but the name is funny, and so I'm going to endorse this.
Mike Bobo has been Georgia's offensive coordinator for like 20 years, and they all despise him, except he was not the coordinator for like the 2 years that they won the national championship, and then they brought him back.
It's probably fine. Anyway, we should probably continue on to yes. Let's move on to extremism. Proper.
So,
really sunny subject everybody loves. No bummers.
Yeah, no. So this originally started as a follow-up to the intentionally brief conversation we had about the Charlie Kirk shooting, where we didn't know anything, nobody knew anything, and then we found out some stuff, and well, it validates one of our opinions. Propter?
yeah, so I didn't have queer Mormon Paladin on my bingo card, but that sort of seems like where we wound up.
I hate that sentence makes sense in my head.
Yeah, so
none of those words are in the Bible.
Yeah, that's true, actually.
You're going on a list.
It appears that Tyler Robinson, as far as we can tell from his motivations, what's been published so far, is that Tyler Robinson shot Charlie Kirk because he was legitimately opposed to and incensed by Charlie Kirk's opinions about trans people, including Tyler Robinson's girlfriend, who is I'm not sure if they're still together, trans. On one level, this is a very old story, right? Like this is kind of honor killing to protect your partner,
right?
But it's got some very 2020s vibes to it that make it a little different. We had a whole spiel about 4chan and about radicalization through internet portals that are, if not conservative and reactionary, inherently are conservative and reactionary adjacent. That doesn't apply that well to Tyler Robinson, so far as we can tell. However, this is the United States of America in 2025.
All you got to do is wait.
If you wait a couple days, somebody else will come along, and it looks like that absolutely does apply to the ICE shooter, as we're calling him. So if you're keeping track, we've got Kirk, ICE, Boat, Mormon, Casino as the five mass shooters of the last several weeks.
And those are the ones that hit the news.
Those are the ones that hit the news.
The ICE shooter being the one it was Dallas, right?
Yes.
Yes, Dallas, who shot at an ICE facility there and ended up, I think, we killed 2 people.
Killed 2 detainees, injured a 3rd, and then shot himself when authorities approached. Also, one reason I have my camera off is I'm making such a face right now. I'm going to let you finish, but ooh.
This is a bad one.
No, take it over, Cantor. You're the extremism expert. Tell us what's up.
So, I will say this. I think, like, the interesting thing about both of these, from what we can tell, and there's a term we're going to talk about later that this doesn't apply to, despite the way that it sounds, and I will happily go into why it doesn't. I think the thing about both of these guys is, like, I don't think you can call them ideological, and in that way, it is vastly worse than if they were. Both in the case of Tyler Robinson and what we know about Joshua John so far. By the way, he sounds like John Jones. It gets stuck in my head. So he's the Martian Manhunter.
Sorry, Joshua Jones.
Joshua John is the Dallas shooter.
ICE.
Got it. Thank you.
Dallas ICE shooter, yes. The thing about both of them is that if you remove the killing, they are pretty much just a normal kind of guy. They don't seem to have any, strong views. They're, gamers, kind of stupid memers. It's a pretty normal dude in his 20s in 2025. I would extend this back as well to Thomas Matthew Crooks, Crooks, the guy who shot at Trump's ear again for 1.2 seconds. Donald Trump was the luckiest person on earth. Good God. But like, no, I will happily talk ballistics later, but that was crazy. But no, where again, that's a guy who, all intents and purposes, pretty normal. Like, kind of an annoying high school conservative, but like not what I would call a radical in any way, shape, or form from anything that we can find. The difference between three of them is that Tyler Robinson seemed to be doing pretty okay as a person, like for the most part. You know, he left university, and like a lot of people decide, hey, I'm not a university person, I'm just something else. That's fine, that's whatever. If you want to read into that. Crooks and John, though, where the heck was it? Butler, Florida, or Butler, Pennsylvania, and Dallas Ice Shooter. Those two guys are a really good example of someone going nowhere slow. Like, real loser type of guy there.
The Ice Shooter, it seemed like he'd kind of repelled essentially all of his friends that at least Ken Klippenstein interviewed.
Yeah, pretty much.
Time.
Like, he was just kind of a putz. I mean, I don't want to, like, minimize a guy who just, killed two people. But can I cuss on this show?
You get 3.
Okay, well, my first one is that the John guy primarily just seems like a real dipshit.
That barely even counts.
Yeah, that's half.
Like,
we'll give you a half.
Okay, cool. But no, like, that's the main thing that kind of gets me here. And what I'm building to on this, and I'm not going to spend, 3 hours on this, but is that, like, I worry what we are seeing is a growth in violence from people who are not necessarily on the political fringes, but who are, mainstream adjacent, just kind of, a type of person that you run into all the time at the grocery store, who is primarily motivated to violence by disconnection from reality and a like weird personal heroic narrative. Like, I'm going to do this thing and it's going to get everybody's attention. It's going to be a whole thing. And the thing about that kind of personal heroic narrative violence is a thing that, has happened before, but only comes from like the extreme far fringes. Not just like politically extreme, but just your real weirdos. People who have like an almost worshipful relationship with school shooters. Like those kinds of people.
Or Turner Diaries types.
Yeah, well, and I would say even Turner Diaries is a little too, like, political.
That's true. It might be a little too main. Yeah.
Yeah, but a little, like, hey, there are people who worship, the Columbine shooters because, like, there's basically fandom, which is a quality that we do see in what is, kind of increasingly being called nihilistic violent extremism. But in that, there is a networked quality to it. There is a coherence to, like, the pattern of life that leads up to the violent act. Whereas, like, what we've seen with Tyler Robinson, what we've seen with Joshua John, what we saw with, Crooks, is that, like, everybody goes, wait, this guy? He was, like, a normal dude who I just knew. What do you mean he, like, did this thing? Which, again, if the new profile of the, like, politically violent or violent political actor is more or less a normal 20-something, except for the murder, that's not good. That's extremely bad for, like, the I would say, prospectus of violence in America.
A lot of those guys hanging around.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, annoying meme guy who plays, 3,000 hours of Rust is, a guy they make in a big factory.
Yeah. And there's the other thing is there's so many of them too that even if it's a very small percentage, then you still have a really hard time predicting that and intervening in any way. Like if it's an ideologically motivated thing that's taking place over years, then there are ways that people in the community can say, oh, we might have a problem here, right? But if it's just a guy who's just going about his day and suddenly goes off the deep end like this, how do you stop that in advance?
No, I think it's you can't.
Didn't Robinson's roommate girlfriend wasn't she just as surprised as anybody?
Yep.
Yeah.
About this?
Per the text messages they've released, yeah.
And from what I've gotten from like what his family has said is that like him becoming more political was him going from nothing to a little bit. Because, like, one of the things about, like, political radicals is they want to tell you. Like, it's the one area where horseshoe shit theory is true. Far left, far right, they cannot wait to tell you, here's the crazy stuff that I think. You don't see that with, like, a normal dude. Yeah, because, again, like, kind of online dork is not really diagnostic of too much.
The Robinson thing is troubling in a different way to me, and I've mentioned this before, but I got off of the studying extremists train several stops before Cantor did, but I spent a decent amount of time there. Robinson codes to me very differently in the sense that that should be, it won't be, but it should be a wake-up call to Republicans and hate-mongers of those flavors, because if you can piss off that guy to the point where he's like, nah, you should just go away, that's really, really bad for them.
Yeah.
And I do think there's definitely a line there, and Cantor, you touched on it, but like there's a line there between him and the Dallas Ice Shooter, Crooks, and similar, where that seems to just be that. I'm not going to hand it to the guy, but like at least there was a there. That feels like that's a really bad place for Republicans. Not a good place for anybody, but like maybe tone it down. They won't. But
he wasn't a nihilist, right? I mean, like that's not.
I mean, he was a gamer. Pick one. And like I kind of joke, but like it kind of goes back to what I said like right after the Kirk shooting, right? Like it's kind of hard to tell the difference unless you know them personally or you have a really good corpus, because they all sound like that.
I would say too, a thing that really stood out to me, again, as far as like, trying to diagnose what this guy is, and I think critically, this specific type of violence says more about sort of where we're at as a society. As I'm often saying, we're not yet at the American years of lead, but you can see it from here. Specifically when he was talking in that one chat log, Discord text, we don't know which, because it's one of the worst FBI docs I've seen. That's two. Dude, I
have a
hate
bleep for that word.
Guts.
We have a bleep for that word and for British. Okay. And now I've used my third.
Then I will say something even more insane when I say that word. But no, like he said, I didn't know what to write on the cases, so I put memes on there. Which like this guy somewhere in his head went, oh, I'm engaging in an act of political violence, so I should write something on the casings, and did not have enough going on to contextualize like his act that he just put a gosh darn Helldivers meme on it. Which, like, hey, man, I don't think that's a coherent political actor, and that kind of guy engaging in a high-profile political assassination, not great for my society, a thing that I need to go to the store.
Yeah.
And I can't remember if we got into this the other week, but Helldivers does have politics. They're not particularly coherent or transparent politics.
I would say it is one of the most like it makes Starship Troopers like one of the most subtle works of fiction in the last 1,000 years.
Yeah, like Paul Verhoeven is taking notes. Like Helldivers is not. It is very consistent and very coherent. It's just. I wouldn't even call it satire. I would almost call it just like sarcasm.
Well, I would say as well within the Helldivers community, I'll let you finish, but this is an important part of this. The specific thing that he referenced, the 500 kilogram bomb on the casing, right, is basically code for hey buddy, go fuck yourself in the game. If, like someone's being a butthole, you like post a 500 kilogram, the little arrow thing, which originally got reported as 3 hours, drove me insane, because I also thought, like, what person in 2025 is putting 3 arrows on their casing? Either this person is addicted to Hearts of Iron, or that's not true.
I mean, he was also out there with Bella Ciao, so like,
yeah, but that is a Paradox video game player reference, and it's not good.
Which also made me go bananas.
Yeah, it was a bad week.
Well, this is the thing I said in a couple places. I'm not going to say where, but like before we kind of knew a lot. My thing was, if he turns out, because a bunch of people, and if you're listening to this, I'm pointing my finger at you. Went, oh, he's definitely a groiper. I found a playlist on Spotify that had Bella Ciao on it, and I know that he's a groiper, and he was doing... If we found out he was a groiper, I would not have been shocked. But my initial assumption was this is just some dude. Because
it's always some dude.
It's always some dude, and also, like, the groiper, phenotype, that guy's too busy at home jorking it to, like, get out there and do anything. Not to be like nasty, but if we ever have an actual act of groiper terrorism, I will eat my hat.
I did kind of enjoy the hour or so we got of Nick Fuentes thinking it was a groiper, though.
That was cool.
That was really good.
Yeah, he had to put down his 20 terabytes of transgender pornography to go, hey. I want to be clear. I'm not being nasty when I say that. That is a true fact about Nick Fuentes. He has a crippling transgender fetish.
Yeah, he doesn't know how to like sanitize his Twitch streams.
No. Hey, buddy, you capture the it's called content capture. You don't capture the whole window, otherwise someone can see your 87 tabs of extremely specific pornography.
So
I wish any of this wasn't true. Can I go back to like 1996?
No, none of us will find out like what Newt Gingrich is posting on Usenet.
So I think kind of one takeaway here is that a lot of these sort of internet nihilists swim in very similar waters, regardless of what political orientation or lack of political orientation they're coming to things from. Is that fair to say?
I think I would say I this is the tricky thing. Like, I don't know that I would call him a nihilist, right? Like, I think that evokes a very specific thing, and I will happily talk about the real deal nihilist, or the nihilistic actors, we'll say, because nihilist is a very specific philosophy that they are, and it's a whole thing. But like,
yeah, they're just assholes.
Yeah, pretty much. Whereas this is some my real concern, and it's the thing that I got from the extreme lack of sophistication with the Joshua John thing, is that like, and this is getting into weird social theory stuff that I'm gonna like, make a 20,000 post thread about in like 6 months, is that I worry that we have this massive population of people in a society where we have very much normalized, violent ideation, and we have these people whose, almost exclusive form of socialization is through signs and symbols, pure memes. Nothing they say means the thing they say. Nothing they think means the thing, like, conceptually, verbally, that they are thinking. This is going to sound a little fear-mongering, a little crazy, but like, I do think that has a way of disconnecting people from reality. For instance, I think Tyler Robinson didn't think he was going to get caught. I think there's a real chance that Joshua John, like at 6:30 a.m., because remember, this is a field office, not a detention center, right? This guy goes to the detention center off of Stemmons Freeway in Dallas at 6:30 in the morning and shoots at what is probably an empty van in the parking lot. Oh no, I've killed 2 people. I don't think this guy had a plan or had any planning beyond, I'm going to get this Car 98, go up on this roof and fire off a couple shots. I don't think he had a strong plan B. Unless, I think if he had a plan, it was, get himself killed.
Are you telling me it was a Car 98?
Yeah. It was well, this is the best part too. Although it was a Mauser, it is a different model of Mauser than Tyler Robinson's. For those who are not from DFW, and for those who are, the one with the big, what's that stupid rabbit thing with deer antlers?
Jackalope.
Jackalope, yeah. DFW is covered in like really good milsurp shops. The best one is one that has a jackalope across the way.
Milsurp is military surplus.
Oh, sorry, God.
And that's 2 the more you knows for this episode.
Yes. I would bet $1,000 that this absolute dullard, this pudgy oaf, went to one of DFW's 10,000 milsurp shops where you can, some peepaw who like stole that rifle from a Nazi he stabbed to death, died, and his idiot grandkid sells it at the milsurp for like, $4. You can get a 100-year-old rifle in DFW at the drop of a hat. It's not hard. But
the reason I went damn it for the audience is it's a meme gun. It's
also
from the World War II video games.
Yes. I think it's more that it's what Tyler Robinson used. With Tyler Robinson, I think it was his grandpa's gun, and like, Mauser rifles are stupidly common in America. They're probably the best, like, affordable hunting rifle you can get. I don't think there's anything to that other than it's the rifle that he could get his hands on. 3.8 Mausers all over in America. I think in the case of Joshua John, he went out and got a Mauser. So,
I don't actually know the answer to this question, but did Joshua John have weapons training previously? Like was he a gun guy, or was this?
It seems like no.
Okay.
Yeah. There's a lot of question marks.
That was the thing too with the Charlie Kirk shooting that was immediately apparent, even though we weren't sure whether he was a groyper or not. It was clear that shooter came out of a milieu that was, we talked about this a couple times already on this podcast, so I'm just going to reiterate it, that was heavily exposed to guns. There was pictures of him with his family with guns at a heavy machine gun in one case, at some rifle fair or something. I'm not sure what the context was, but his family all owned guns. Like, he was in that milieu, and that milieu is very common today. On top of your concerns, Cantor, around communication through symbol and through meme, a lot of people in this country have grown up and know nothing else other than guns and violence as this sort of normal thing in everyday life. And even if they're not experiencing a road rage shooting every other day, they're still in an environment where lethal force is readily available and totally normalized. And I think it's really important to understand that wasn't true 40 years ago, for instance, right? The modern gun movement looks nothing like it did in the 1970s or 1980s.
It's not just guns either, right? Like, I was recently, how do I put this in a way that is sufficiently anonymizing? I was reacquainted with a acquaintance of mine from when I was younger, and like, the guy made a joke about running over someone in the parking lot because they were walking too slow, right? Like, that's something I would find unthinkable. Like, I can't imagine making the joke. But, like, it was so matter of fact that it's like one of those, oh, you say this a lot type of things. It's not just the guns. It is like a culture of accepting this background radiation level of violence, and it does mostly come out of right-wing spaces, whether or not these particular off-gases are necessarily
and that's the thing, just probabilistically, if you have millions of people who have been raised in that environment, the likelihood that one of them just kind of does something like this, regardless of the ideological motivation or the specific circumstances, goes way up. Like, it just has to. It has to go up if that. And that's, I think, worth considering in all this, too.
I do think, because you mentioned like something that changed like in the mid-centuries. People forget the NRA, for all its many flaws, I'm not going to defend the NRA here, but used to be primarily about, hey, if you want to use guns, you need to be trained, you need all these things. I will say two things as someone who's a little bit of a firearms pervert myself.
We got that, Cantor. We got that.
You're not the only one on
was it when I said the Car 98 thing, was that already crossing the line?
No, there's no line. We just picked up where you were coming from, that's all.
Okay, but like, there is something in because so for those who don't know, like, my whole horseshit is I used to be a pretty high level officer in the Socialist Rifle Association and was a big nerd about we need to do much more formal training. And one thing I do believe that is just true is that, like, training with firearms has a de-radicalizing effect. I will say this. I am a long-range sports shooter. I can push out to about 800 meters. The fact that I say meters and not yards tells real heads, oh God.
Yes, that's that you're a socialist.
Yes. That kind of shooting is good for two things. Hunting, a thing I don't really do because I don't like to wake up early in the morning, and killing people. And I don't want to do the first one, and I want to do the second one even less. I do it because it's fun. It's basically going to the driving range. You do math for 5 minutes, and then you get to shoot a gong very far away. Very cool. But like, a lot of my like normalness around firearms is like, well, this is a tool. This is a thing that you can, do sport shooting with. You could, whatever. And the like fetishes, the gun fetishes, which I would say in America is the mainstream like gun person here, where you're doing, real Marxist style object fetishism, but also real Western myth of the gun. Sorry, everybody. Sorry. We put a quarter in a jar. But also, like, real Western ass, myth of the gun. Like, this is an extension of my donger stuff. It almost valorizes not knowing anything about what you're doing, which again separates you from, at the end of the day, this is a thing that is really good for killing people. Which, if you're being weird about the gun and you haven't internalized that this thing can kill people, you will do dangerous things with it. I mean, it's just.
Honestly, that tracks, because like if you look at the people who are so disconnected from reality to start posting big gun collections on Facebook and the like, it's all a bunch of absolutely crap, cheap AR-15s. You do not need more than one AR-15. They're the same within parameters rifle, right? Like, you buy more than one of those so you can look like somebody who owns a lot of them.
Isn't the whole point of an AR-15 that you can mod it?
Yes. Oh, no, if I see an unmodded PSA, I'm coming to your house and beating you with the hose.
What's a PSA?
Palmetto State Armory, they're they're where you can get an AR-15 for like $700. They're ass.
Yeah. They're right down the road. I got a palmetto tree on my hat, actually, right now, because I'm wearing a Carolina Panthers hat.
It's unrelated, don't worry.
Of North Carolina and South Carolina flags. Anyhow, sorry.
Yeah, I mean that kind of brings us to another point about gun culture, which is that there's a big chunk of economic signaling happening there also, correct? These are expensive machines, and if you own a bunch of expensive machines, that's a display of economic virility.
If they want to talk about expensive machines, let me point them at 3D printers.
Or you can signal your one expensive machine inside your other by putting a Glock sticker on the back of your lifted F-250, which is just the best possible way to get your car broken into you can imagine.
Back when I used to work in finance in DFW, I, on my commute, like, pretty reliably, like 2 out of 3 times, I would be driving to wherever this guy was going, who drove a lifted F-150, who had a Remington on one side and a RWDS sticker on the other. So I got to go to work with the right-wing death squad guy.
Jesus.
Fort Worth, baby. We love it.
North Texas, not even once.
I like Fort Worth. It's better than Dallas.
It's all North Texas to me.
Wow. To what Propter said, I will say this too. You've made a really interesting point with like it's a projection of again, I'm about to say some real gun pervert stuff here, of projection of like economic virility, right? As a long range shooter, okay, this is a really good rule of thumb. The optic should cost more than the gun.
Mm-hmm.
You're only as good as the glass is.
It's the camera.
Exactly, yeah. And the thing that you always see with these buffoons who post their big gun collections, either they all have irons, or it's the most cheap-ass peepaw, bought it in flea market hunting scope you've ever seen in your life.
No. They're not buying it in flea markets. They're buying them on AliExpress.
Yeah, they're buying them on... That's true. They're buying them on Alibaba. And look, there's some really good... Like, I'm a Holosun defender. There's some good Chinese stuff out there. Not the stuff that some dullard is like, this is $100 and I plonked it on, like, the worst AR money can buy that I've never lubricated. It's a real... I would genuinely compare it to the... we used to... God, what was the term? George, maybe you may know this. There's a term that's like a big house with expensive curtains and no furniture inside.
Yeah.
And it is the projection of, like, I can get the big house, I can make it look nice from the outside, and there's nothing in it. And that is, like, with a lot of these gun collections, it is super, super what you see. It is volume. It is, if you don't know anything, oh, how nice. But anyone who knows goes, that is a McMansion with nothing inside.
Yep.
But like, going back to the original point is, like, it is cosplay signaling to do violence.
Yes. And for those people especially, yeah. It's like, when it happens, I'll be ready.
Yeah, no, you are going out in the first wave, my man. If it's,
I remember back in 2020, a lot of the like back because I got into the real fringe stuff by studying preppers, who I mostly like. I love back when we had normal preppers. Most of them were just nerds who like doing stuff in the woods and wanted a reason to do it. I think it's cool to do stuff in the woods, but like back when they started going really crazy, people would post their like bug out bags. And it's like, homie, you've got 3 different calibers in there. You are not gonna make it. You are a walking loot drop. I'm gonna take your 2 granola bars.
If you need more than 40 rounds of 9mm, like you're over your head and it's done anyways.
This is also like a real gun culture thing, and I apologize for not turning this into a gun podcast. Back when I was doing SRA stuff, and I would be doing training things. I'm a very boring person when it comes to firearms. I like a bolt gun, a normal ass, peepaw rifle. Someone would go like, oh, well, when you concealed carry, how many clips do you carry? I was like, well, I mean, like the 1 in the gun, maybe 2. And they're like, well, you're not worried about running out. I was like, brother, if I'm shooting like 30 rounds with a handgun, look, it's whatever. I shouldn't have gotten myself in that situation.
5-star wanted level on GTA.
Yeah, like it's not gonna. Like, I'm pretty sure that if I can get through the first clip, something has gone terribly wrong. Like.
And that's true too, like for home defense too, right? Like if your concern is someone breaking in the middle of the night, you do not want a handgun. You want a shotgun.
Yeah, maybe a shotgun, maybe a 9mm SBR. Sorry, everybody.
Yeah, because like if 1 round goes off when someone's outside your bedroom door, they are not coming in after that first round goes through the door, right? Whereas with a handgun, like it's a very different proposition. But the calculation these people are doing is not.
They don't cause engorgement, George.
Right. Yeah. Well, speak for yourself.
To take us back to center here, like I think one of the things that we're doing, because we're normal and our brains work, is we're interfacing with reality. We're looking at these things as like, okay, what if this thing happened? What would I realistically do here? I think when we talk about, kind of your weirder people, and again, we can talk about the nuttier stuff if you want, like your Tyler Robinson, your Joshua John, whatever, these are not people who are interfacing with reality in the same way that we are. Sorry to everybody listening, very unpopular opinion. The types of people to engage in individual political violence are inherently not normal.
Yeah.
Like, they may have a lot of social media normal, but, like, if you can imagine yourself, and I mean realistically, looking in the mirror, locking eyes with yourself, and going like, oh, yeah, no, I could totally go out and murder someone today. I hope that's not true, and it's probably not. Like, you're necessarily talking about someone who is not connecting with, the real world in the way that you are. It's like, especially if you do it in something public, you're not going to get away with it. You will not be remembered positively. You will cause a lot of problems downstream. I mean, I will say, I don't think Tyler Robinson has made things better for anybody. Nope. They're hoisting that whistle pretty hard.
It's not going to work, but they're working on it. They're doing the best they can.
Oh, they're trying.
It kind of feels like the moment's already passed, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's a reason that militaries work so hard to train people out of the natural impulse to not want to kill another human being. Like, that is a huge part of military training, is just getting people to pull the trigger with the intention to actually kill the person that's in their sights. And if you're just walking
even then,
around
it doesn't
like
always
that,
work.
exactly. And if you're just walking around like that, day to day, like there's something really different about how your brain works, and it's not a good kind of different.
And I think for a lot of people, it is something they've done to themselves. If you live in that ideation, you valorize not just the act itself, but if you're valorizing the ideation, you are training yourself to normalize it in your head. And like, I would say especially, like, you know, look, we can go into all kinds of fantasies about what if society collapses and we're all doing, you know, Book of Eli stuff.
I would rather
that's
not.
the movie I pulled.
That's a wild choice. Are we gonna blind ourselves?
I was trying to think of like any movie where like someone's really Roman and things are nasty, and like the Book of Eli is the only thing that came to mind.
I probably shouldn't have said blind. Spoilers. Sorry. Oops.
Oh yeah, sorry for Book of Eli from like what, 2007.
Yeah.
A movie that like 10 people have watched.
The positive thing I would take away from this too, though, is that it goes the other way too. I think like if your ideation and your like thing you're imagining yourself doing is an act of care or compassion or whatever it is, that can fix your brain just as much as thinking about taking another person's life on a regular basis can break it. Like, you can do this in a positive way. You know, reinforcement learning is like a very key thing for how our brains work. Ask me, I've got a 2.5-year-old, right? Like, watching her brain like do the calculus of how the universe works is amazing. And you see, when you've got little kids like that, like you see that fundamental process, and it works on adults too. Our brains are more set in their ways. But if you go around every day thinking like, how can I make the lives of my family or the people I interact with in the street or my coworkers or my friends or whoever better in some small way, you're going to start doing that a lot more. So, you know, that doom loop is also like a positive feedback loop in the other way too. And, you know, we are trying to be normal here. So we don't I wanted to throw that in as like a positive takeaway, as instead of going too far down the negative rabbit hole.
Oh, 100%. I will say the Instagram girlies are totally right. Manifestation is real. And yeah, if you focus on like being chill, you will be chill.
Not really what I meant, but
no, I mean in very simple terms, that is what that is. It's just like, hey, hey, I could have gone way worse. It's a thing Scott Adams wrote a ton about in one of his dumbass books. But no, like if you think every day, hey, I'm just going to be cool with it and not be a problem for people, it will work out that way. Like it is just that simple. Like we are the thing that we like choose to be. I could make in fact, I will. Like the person we become is a conversation between the things that we are in reality and the person we would like to be. And somehow, you know, we kind of average out. And if you think the person you want to be is bad and nasty, you're going to get closer to bad and nasty. But if it's like, hey, I want to be like nice to be around and not scare people when I, you know, say stuff about guns, you can you can become that person. It's not hard.
Use the metric system. That's the first step.
Yes.
I got bad news for my wood shop.
God. Look, I used to do carpentry, and like when I switched using metric tools, life was way better.
I buy Festool.
Yes.
It's all metric. It's also very expensive and poserish, but I'll take it.
The imperial like system for bits is some of the worst stuff on earth, and I despise it. It's no
Can't
good.
do it.
We gotta convert everybody. We can keep Fahrenheit. We can do what the British do. Oh, sorry, there it is. But like we can, instead of miles, we can use Fahrenheit because it makes more sense.
Oh.
But everything else got to be metric.
I appreciate that George is over in our show notes diligently recording that before I got there.
So then, do we want to talk a little bit about the 3 that happened this weekend that are sort of more breaking, or do we want to not speculate as much? I mean,
we can do a quick whip round on what we know on those, which is not a whole lot. All right. So once again, this is Boat Mormon Casino. The boat shooter is a 40-year-old former, I believe, Marine sniper who at one point sued the military on the basis that there was an LGBT conspiracy against white men that was the reason why Abu Ghraib happened. So, kind of a wacko, definitely a wacko, and also identifiably right-wing. The Mormon shooter, I think we're still missing a lot of information on that. He had a big old Trump Vance flag up on his fence, and a long social media history that is evidence of some exposure to Fox News. So,
maybe bringing Bluetooth a little bit closer every day, right?
Yeah, I mean, definitely.
Does the right? I mean, is there a thing on the right about not liking Mormons? Is that because that would be totally new information to me if that was a thing.
It's a fringe thing, but yeah, that's one of the reasons it's why Mitt Romney lost, actually. Obama's turnout was kind of errant, but the Republican turnout was miserable because he's a Mormon.
Yeah, evangelicals and Mormons have kind of a contentious history. I mean, we'll see exactly what happens in terms of motive, but if it turns out that he targeted the place not because of interpersonal reasons, but because it was a Mormon temple, I think what LDS is going to do is going to make various Jewish congregation lockdowns over the last several years look like Mickey Mouse stuff. I think they're going to harden hard, and there's going to be guns all over the place at Mormon temples. But we'll see. They also just had their president die, so there's a new guy in charge as of literally not even yet. I don't think that they've officially conferred the mantle of the chief of LDS on the next guy, but this is a hell of an event to come into for a new prophet, a new president for Mormons.
And then we got the casino shooting, which
the casino shooting the guy they've got in custody on that, it's not really clear what his deal is. Might have just been mad about casino stuff. I haven't seen anything that
many such cases
indicates a particularly ideological motive. One of the guys who got shot was retired Border Patrol, so that angle is in the air. But I don't think there's any evidence that it was targeted in particular.
It's pretty grim. Leaving aside, again, the ideology entirely, it's pretty grim. And I also can't help but think this trend that Cantor has pointed out of thinking in symbol terms and just not processing reality the same way people that are actually using their senses to do so do, in a world where so many people are using AI, and not that so many people necessarily in percentage terms are developing very unhealthy psychologies from that relationship, but where because so many people are using it, you don't have to have that high of a percentage go down a pretty dark path. Like, it just feels like a matter of time before one of these LLMs drives someone in a very causal way to mass violence. And that's not an assumption about any given model. It's just if you have so many people using them and so many guns floating around and a culture that has gone the way it has, it just feels like an accelerant.
I wish you didn't put that into my head. But
I think as well, because I think it's there's more to it than just that. Because I think one thing that, like, I remember when it was like back in like 2017 or something, there was a big blow up because some Republican candidate, had like a bunch of targets on like different Democrats and stuff, right?
Yeah,
I will admit,
wasn't it?
Gonna be a jerk here. I was kind of like, oh, this is the libs freaking out, looking for me mad. It's not that big a deal. No, I do think actually that like that and stuff before presaged a real like introduction of increasingly violent, antisocial, whatever you want to say, language. And do I think that means that like Donald Trump is going to go out and kill somebody? Not personally.
I don't know if he could like get his hand in the gun. Like, can he fit that sausage finger in a trigger guard?
Oh, I've seen some big boys do it. Might take a hacksaw, but he could get that trotter in there.
For what it's worth, there's an essay that I'll drop in the show notes that is from a very interesting guy who, in his telling, once went distance shooting at the same range that Donald Trump was at, and Trump was a pretty good shooter. So.
Yeah. Huh. I think you got that article from me.
No, I definitely didn't. I'll tell you what. Huh. I'll tell you how I know that later.
All right. Well, we'll get that one later then.
But no, I think there's nothing to the idea that like the heightening of violent rhetoric we see in our society, and like I we're in a pretty challenging moment. It's pretty normal to have some pretty, we'll say, hot rhetoric about what's going on, for sure. But like, I think I have this concern. I'll say that it is itself a driver of stochastic violence. It is the sort of thing that if someone is already unstable, already has that violent ideation, already has all that going on, I think it is more predictable for them to go, okay, then I'm going to do it. Because this is where we're at. Again, it's, you're talking about someone who does this, you're already talking about kind of an aberrant psychology, but like that permission structure. I mean, say, George, you got a 2-year-old. You know how it is. Once someone feels like they can do something.
Game over, baby.
Yeah, their possibility space is expanded. Yeah. Once that kid figures out the fridge can open, you're done.
Oh, man. She's got my appetite, too, so.
Oh, but it's over. I have a friend who recently had an entire roll of toilet paper flushed by a 3-year-old, so, yeah. But no, that's the thing, that expansion of the possibility space of, oh, I am someone with violent ideation, and we live in a violent society. Not great for, like, the stability of society as in, like, an ongoing project.
And maybe we should just have less validation of this.
Yes.
Yeah, right? Like,
and again, I think the troubling thing is that, like, again, we're in a moment that, like, the temperature is not going to go down for a while. I don't see how we have another quiet week for quite a while. And how you fix things after that, it's been done by other societies, but, like, it's batting odds aren't great.
It feels like the thing you need to get a social consensus on the stuff you need to do to fix it has to be a lot worse than a lot of stuff we've seen over the past 5 years, just based on how people have reacted to the past 5 or 10 years of American culture. And this past weekend, for reasons I'm not going to get into because I don't want to bore anyone, I've been talking a lot with my wife about how people reacted to COVID when it hit and how completely insane it drove some people, whether it's the anti-vax stuff, whether it's sort of the break that some very large prominent pundit style figures have had over how they think about the world, whether it's just the madness we saw around refusing to obey lockdowns or whatever. That was so bad that millions of people died, right? Like, what's it going to take to actually break through to people that we need a new social consensus around this stuff? It's going to have to get a lot worse. It has, I mean, and that's a pretty grim thought to have.
And, maybe there are things that make me hopeful. For instance, we're starting to see, like, a real backlash to the AI stuff. I think a lot of the fact that, like, once a week some massive YouTuber does a new video on, hey, why does technology suck now? Why are we no longer hopeful about the future? It actually makes me, kind of weirdly hopeful. Like, oh, we are seeing the beginnings of a different kind of pendulum swing than we've seen in the past, where, like, people are realizing that we kind of don't really have, the civil society as much as we used to, and they would like that very much bad. I personally am a strong believer in the civic religion. I think it keeps people, kind of toed in place, a thing that we, need for society to function. And my desperate hope is that enough people go, oh, this sucks, actually, that we all decide to be normal at once and everything is just kind of chill for a while. Again, it's going to be shaky, but maybe. Yeah.
Well, on that, we'll end it on that optimistic note. Cantor, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your views of the space, because this is certainly an area that behooves some expertise. So we really appreciate it. It was great having you on.
I'm happy to help. There's a billion more things that I probably could have rambled about. I didn't want to get too grim and start talking about, like, the weird cults and stuff. But I think, like, the stuff we're seeing now is pretty hard to contextualize. But, like, if I got a piece of advice about it, if there's a new one that happens, again, not to be a bummer, there'll probably be a new one the next week because it's where we're at. I mean, as someone who, like, my job is, like, thing happens, time to stuff out a report, is, just don't look at it for, like, an hour. Just let it bake, because 18 million people are going to have 1,000 takes on it. They're going to be doing fantasy football with whatever terrible new thing that's happened. You don't have to. You don't have to fry your brain on, oh my God, what's this thing? Just put on a nice song. Maybe have a delicious beer and be cool, or a cheer wine.
Don't do that. I mean, do if you like that sort of thing.
That's it for us this week. Thanks very much for listening. If you have a chance, rate and review us. My mother saw our podcast reviews this past week, and y'all made her a very happy lady. She was oohing and awing at all the nice little reviews that got written. So thank you for making my mom happy, and please continue to do so. For Normal Men in Charlotte, I'm George.
In DC, I'm Propter.
In outer Florida, I'm low-tax speedrun enjoyer.
And I'm in Boston.